Discover 5 spine-chilling wilderness horror stories that expose haunted secrets of the outdoors the moment Sarah and Oliver crossed the weathered sign announcing Cedar Hollow. A shiver clawed its way down her spine. Tall trees lurked like silent sentinels on both sides of the road, their shadows stretching, reaching. A whisper of unease fluttered in her stomach. The picturesque rivers and charming homes they had envisioned turned ominous under the forest's watchful gaze. What had she brought them into? In those early days, the town had seemed quaint, but oddities soon crept in around the edges. Skeptical looks from neighbors made her heart race and cold sweat bead on her brow. Their hushed conversations dripped with a tension she couldn't decipher. The air weighed heavy, filled with secrets begging to be uncovered. Meanwhile, Oliver grew enchanted by the cryptic symbols carved into the trees of blackwood pines, fascinated by the peculiar shapes that seemed to whisper, "Come closer." One evening, a chill slinked through the air as twilight cast a slate-gray hue over Cedar Hollow. The sheriff, a disheveled man with a friendly lipstick-stained smile, approached Sarah with a haggard look. "Ma'am, eyes on your boy, the woods at night aren't safe. You gotta keep him close." His warning gripped her, turning her stomach. The words danced like fog, thick with implications. Shadows flickered and lengthened around her as if the very trees heard their conversation. Hidden forces straining to break free. She forced a shaky laugh, dismissing his caution. But even as she did, a gnawing instinct screamed for her to keep Oliver inside after dark. Then, one fateful night, panic erupted like a punch to the gut. The air was cold. The moon hung low, casting eerie shapes through the windows. Sarah discovered her son was gone. Heart racing, she stumbled through the front door, breathless with fear. "Oliver!" she cried, each syllable echoing into the chilling silence, swallowed by the dark woods. Trees loomed like giants, shadows flickering closing in. Panic surged as she plunged into the maze of blackwood pines. Her pulse raced like a drum, and she could swear she heard whispers the trees confiding in one another. "Come find your son," they seemed to taunt. Each branch cracked underfoot, and the stench of damp earth clung to her clothes. The deeper she ventured, the more disoriented she felt. Like the woods were shifting around her, drawing her in, wrapping her in their grasp. Then, a shattered cry pierced the veil of dread. "Mom," came from ahead, pulling her closer. Oliver's voice was like a lifeline in the dark, echoing through the tangle of thorns and limbs. With newfound urgency, she stumbled toward the sound, fear clawing at her chest. As she broke through the thicket into a small glade, the air turned electric. Before her, a ghostly light flickered, illuminating a circle drawn with those very symbols that had entranced Oliver. They pulsed like a heartbeat. A sickening sense of awareness washed over her. Memories of old tales danced at the edges of her mind as a fading breeze whispered warnings. What had Cedar Hollow hidden? Was she too late to rescue Oliver? The shadows deepened with the knowledge that somewhere within that forest, darkness was alive and hungry, waiting for another soul to add to its legends. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each step forward felt heavier, as if the ground itself conspired against her. She scanned the glade, heart pounding in her ears. Then she saw him, a small figure, at the center of the haunting circle, staring, wide-eyed at the glowing symbols beneath his feet. "Mommy, why are they talking?" he murmured. The pull of the woods tightened, something unseen pressing at her back, urging her to move, but toward what? Just as she reached for Oliver, the symbols flared, and shadows lunged. The darkness was alive, whispering her name. Would she join the tales of lost souls within Cedar Hollow? Or could she fight against the secrets threatening to consume her son? The air crackled with tension as Sarah froze, her outstretched hand trembling inches from Oliver. The symbols throbbed with unnatural energy, casting erratic shadows that twisted and coiled like serpents around her legs. Panic surged through her as the shadows thickened, emblematic of an ancient malevolence that had awoken within the woods. "Mom!" Oliver's voice was a desperate wail, suffocated by the grasping darkness. She felt a sudden chill, as if the very life was being drained from the glade. "Don't worry, baby, I'm coming." But as she reached for him, the light pulsed again, and with it came an overwhelming flood of whispers. This time they were clearer, intertwined with sorrow, joy, and despair, echoes of countless souls lost beneath the canopy. "Join us, be one with the woods," they called softly. A lullaby turned sinister. The urge to step forward and surrender fluttered in her mind like a moth drawn to flame. Just then, Oliver stumbled backward, eyes wide with terror. Sarah's heart shattered with each fleeting moment that passed. Gripping her resolve, she broke through the entangling shadows, shoving aside branches as they clawed at her. The air was thick, suffocating, each inhale a battle against the suffocating pressure that pinned her against the earth. But she refused to yield. She had come too far. Suddenly, the circle of symbols erupted in blinding light, illuminating the glade as if the sun itself had burst forth. Sarah shielded her eyes, heart racing as she shouted to Oliver, "Stay right there. I'll get you out." The light flickered, revealing vague figures darting among the trees, their features obscured but their intentions clear. They watched her, their eyes glimmering like distant stars, hungry for a new presence to join their collective. "Mom, the trees are angry," Oliver cried, fear choking his words. "Angry? Why?" She shouted back as her feet carried her toward him, adrenaline pushing her forward despite the whispers tugging at her thoughts. Each step a competition against her growing dread. Time warped as she felt the shadows reforming behind her, solidifying into something grotesque, an amalgamation of twisted branches and teeth. Driven by feral instincts, she lunged for Oliver, and in that electric moment, the blinding light spotlighted their eyes, sharing clarity. "Mommy, hold my hand," Oliver pleaded, stretching out his small, trembling fingers. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the bond, the spark of pure love battling against the consuming darkness as their hands clasped together. Sarah felt a surge of strength, a powerful pulse coursing between them that pushed against the encroaching shadows. "We're getting out," she shouted, and they turned to flee, the symbols flickering and dimming behind them. But with each step away, she sensed something sinister was tracking them, hungry for its lost prize. As they dashed from the glade, back towards the crooked path that twisted out of sight. Then the ground rumbled beneath their feet. A deep, gnarled voice boomed around them. "You cannot leave, the pact must be fulfilled." Stumbling, Sarah fell, dragging Oliver down with her. They hit the ground hard, but she quickly pushed herself back up, dragging her son along with every ounce of determination she had left. The desperate pulse of the forest fought against them as they broke free from the glade, trees bending as if rebuffed by an unseen force. But as they emerged, the moonlight washed over them, revealing a path lined with the eyes of the townspeople staring, expressionless, waiting. Were they real? Had they followed? As she stood, bewildered, breaths heavy, Sarah locked eyes with the sheriff, his smirk now twisted, more a grimace than a smile. "Welcome back, Sarah. We've been waiting," he said, his voice dripping with malice. Terror clawed at her as she realized. Cedar Hollow had no intention of letting them leave. It was a trap deeper than she had ever fathomed, with Oliver standing precariously at the center. What horrifying pact had Cedar Hollow bound them to, and how much time did they have before darkness claimed them once more? The sheriff's grin widened as he stepped closer, shadows dancing across his features. Sarah felt the weight of the townspeople's gaze. Their eyes weren't just watching, they were judging. Each one of them, a part of this tableau that felt more like a nightmare than reality. "Mom, what is happening?" Oliver clutched tighter to her side, trembling. Her heart raced. She needed to protect him, but how could she stave off this impending doom? Ignoring the sheriff's unsettling presence, Sarah turned to her son, her voice a frantic whisper. "We have to run now." She could hardly breathe. The townsfolk stood like sentinels, invisible threads of fate tethering them to the dark heart of Cedar Hollow. They tore down the path, hearts pounding, away from the sheriff's mocking voice. "You can't escape your past," he shouted, but she pushed those words aside, focused only on the remnants of path leading deeper into the thick woods. Oliver's footsteps pounded against the dirt, but each step felt like they were being dragged back by something unseen, the pull of centuries woven into the very earth. Branches whipped at them as they navigated the underbrush, the shadows closing in from all sides. They stumbled into a small clearing, the moonlight almost obscured by the looming trees overhead. Desperate, she glanced around for any sign of salvation, but the encroaching darkness always felt closer. "Mom," the whispers Oliver said, his delicate voice quavering. "They're getting louder." They froze mid-stride, the invisible weight upon them suffocating. The whispers streamed into her mind, overlapping words that dripped with sorrow and longing. "Join us, we are waiting, be free forever, no. Stay strong, Oliver." She snapped back, shaking her head, ridding herself of their insidious allure. But even as she spoke, the words twisted around her thoughts, tugging with regret, promising peace. "Mom, I hear them. They want to take me," Oliver whimpered, dropping her hand. The shadows thickened, swirling at his feet, beckoning him closer. Panic surged through Sarah as she darted forward, grasping at him before he could succumb to their call. "Don't. Stay with me," she screamed, but his eyes glazed over, a dazed expression taking hold. The horrible truth washed over her. How much of Oliver was left if they were willing to take him? Behind them, the sheriff appeared again, a dark silhouette emerging, his laugh echoing through the clearing like a thunderclap. "You think you can protect him? The woods claim what is theirs. You are bound by a curse just like the rest." Sarah's heart sank. She could see Oliver becoming lost to the glimmering darkness. She was losing him. With renewed desperation, she shouted over the cacophony, "We are not bound by your pact. You don't own us." The shadows recoiled slightly, but it wasn't enough. Somehow she had to break the spell. She thought back to the symbols, to the pulse of energy she felt before the light. Could she awaken that power again? "Oliver," she cried again, reaching for him as she fought against the current pulling him away. "Remember the light. Remember our love." With that, she focused every fiber of her being into their bond. As if her determination ignited a spark, a bright light erupted between them, illuminating the clearing. For a brief moment, the tendrils of darkness shrieked in fury, retreating like shadows at dawn. But the moment was fleeting. The light flickered, and the shadows lunged back, angrier, more ferocious. "You think mere love can save you?" The sheriff's voice echoed, now low and powerful, a tone that tasted like ash. "You don't understand what we become." Sarah's vision blurred as darkness cocked its head, honing in on her. She felt the ground trembling beneath her, and she knew they had only seconds left. "Hold on, Oliver," she shouted, but fear gripped her. Was love enough? Was she strong enough? Before she could find out, the ground cracked open beneath them, a gaping mouth unhallowed by the forest's hunger. "Mom, please!" Oliver's terrified voice broke through the chaos. Just before they fell, Sarah made a choice. A promise whispering in her heart broke free. She would not let him go. They would either escape together or perish together, but she would not falter. With a final push against the abyss, Sarah threw her arms around Oliver as the shadows surged, leaving her with one chilling thought. What other sacrifices awaited them in Cedar Hollow? The darkness swallowed them whole as the scream of the woods echoed in their retreating hearts. The abyss was cold and dark, pulling at them with an insatiable hunger. Sarah felt Oliver's grip on her hand weaken as they plummeted, swallowed by nothingness. The air howled around them, a chorus of despair. She felt herself slipping into an endless void where time and space twisted like smoke. "Mom!" Oliver's voice echoed, tinged with terror. "No, I'm right here. I want to let go." She felt a rush of panic slam into her chest. She could see him in the blackness, a figure flailing, a little boy lost. But the darkness buzzed with whispers again, voices from the depths clawing at her mind. Join us, be free forever, they lured her, wrapping their deceitful words around her heart like a serpent. She fought against it, squeezing Oliver's hand. Focus on my voice, please. The weight of the shadows bore down on them, stretching through the void like grotesque fingers. Suddenly, the emptiness behind them was punctured by what felt like solid ground. They landed hard, rolling to a stop in a thicket of twisted roots and damp leaves. Gasping for air, they scrambled to their feet. Oliver looked around, eyes wide with confusion, as if snapping from a dream. Where are we? He trembled. She did not know. The trees were gnarled and ancient, their trunks twisted like the limbs of contorted creatures. A heavy fog hung in the air, swirling around them, suffocating the light. The serenity was mocking, whispering promises of protection, while leaving a sense of danger hanging over them. Stay close, Oliver. We need to keep moving, Sarah urged, her heart racing. Every muscle in her body screamed for retreat, but she could not turn back. They pushed forward, their footsteps muted by the damp earth. Every rustle of the leaves sent shivers down Sarah's spine, each snap of a twig sounded like a warning. The forest felt alive, pulsating with wicked intent. Mom, the whispers are back, Oliver said, his voice quavering. I know, but we can't listen to them, she snapped, though the heaviness of the forest was tugging at her resolve. They came upon a clearing, brightly lit by an unexplainable light that cracked the oppressive gloom. In the center, an altar stood, adorned with wildflowers and twisted vines, a grotesque offering to the dark spirits of Cedar Hollow. Before she knew it, she was moving toward it, feet seemingly moving of their own accord, drawn by the swirling light. No, Sarah, don't, Oliver screamed, his small voice cutting through the haze. But it was too late. She reached out, fingers brushing against the warm surface. A vision exploded in her mind, echoes of faces twisted in anguish. The townspeople, their eyes hollow, their mouths screaming without sound. This is what you could become. A deep voice rumbled, filled with rage and sorrow. Sarah stumbled back, breathless. What are you? Suddenly, shadows surged from the edges of the clearing, swirling around her like a cyclone. The voices condensed around her, slamming against her consciousness. You belong to us now. There can be no escape. Oliver, she yelled, but he was already retreating, the shadows draping over him like a cloak. Help me, Mom. His small face was terrified, caught in the web of darkness. No. She lunged for him, grabbing his hand just as the shadows threatened to take him. The energy from the altar surged, sending a blast of light into the air, pulled at her, threatening to rip them apart. Pain sliced through her wrists as she struggled to keep her son close. We're getting out of here. But the forest screamed back, a cacophony of tortured souls drowning her out. She could feel the ground slip beneath them as it shuddered like a living thing. A cacophonous roar took hold as the shadows tightened, screaming, "You will serve us. You are bound to us. Not if I can help it," Sarah shouted, pulling Oliver closer. A spark of rage ignited within her, turning the fear into raw power. In a split second, she hurled herself toward the altar. A blinding flash erupted as they collided with the light. It enveloped them, pushing the shadows away, but the darkness clawed at her mind, chanting, "You can. Escape your past, Sarah." As the brightness washed over them, she closed her eyes tightly, bracing for impact. Would they break free or become mere echoes of the cursed town? In an instant, she was flung back. Life rushed in torrents again. The screams faded as she found herself sprawled on a dirt path, heart hammering in her chest. Just as she thought they were safe, the shadows loomed at the edges of the clearing, eyes glinting with malice. "Mom, they're still coming," Oliver cried, pointing at the encroaching darkness. Panic surged anew. They were not finished yet. A desperate escape lay ahead. What other horrors lay in wait for them before they could finally escape Cedar Hollow? The ground trembled beneath Sarah's feet. She instinctively pulled Oliver closer, their breaths coming in quick, shallow gasps. The shadows converging on them whispered promises of despair, lacing their words with an almost intoxicating allure. Each syllable felt like icy fingers brushing against the nape of her neck, threatening to snap her resolve. "Run!" she shouted, adrenaline rushing through her veins. The clearing was beautiful, almost serene, but there was no time to admire it. They raced toward the tree line, branches clawing at their clothes, as if the forest itself wanted to keep them trapped within its twisted embrace. "Mom! They're right behind us!" Oliver's voice cracked with fear, darting glances over his shoulder. "I know. Just keep moving," Sarah urged, desperation clawing at her throat. The shadows were relentless, chasing them like a storm chasing the last vestiges of light at dusk. She could feel the air thickening, pressing down on her as they sprinted deeper into the woods. Each step felt heavier than the last, the fog swirling around them, disorienting and suffocating. The whispers grew louder, echoing in Sarah's mind. Memories flashed like brief snatches of film, faces she recognized flickering in and out, pleading, lost. But she shut her eyes, focusing on Oliver, who pressed forward, fueled by instinct. They stumbled into a narrow path, flanked by towering trees. The shadows shifted behind them, blending with the mist, moving closer. A low growl slipped through the fog, steady and ominous. Panic surged as she realized the whispers had shifted to a guttural chant. Join us, the rhythm matched the pounding of her heart. "What if they catch us, Mom?" Oliver's fear swirled in the air like thick smoke. "No, we won't let them." She gritted her teeth, determination igniting within her. The trees stretched higher, branches weaving a canopy, sealing them in a world away from reality. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath their feet, and they tumbled into a hollowed sinkhole, the world above disappearing as they fell. She and Oliver landed in a heap, dirt and leaves covering them like a shroud. "Are you okay?" she gasped, trying to catch her breath. She turned to check on Oliver, who looked pale and shaken. "Yeah, I think so. But, Mom," he pointed upward, his small voice trembling with fear. Sarah looked up. The shadows loomed at the edge of the sinkhole, stretching down like dark fingers seeking to grasp whatever light remained. "Are they?" Oliver stammered, eyes wide, fixating on something deeper within. Before she could respond, something shifted in the shadows. A figure emerged, its features obscured by the gloom, an echo of something familiar yet twisted. "Sarah," the voice was low, like gravel scraping against stone. "You cannot escape your fate. You're part of this darkness, leave us alone." Sarah screamed, her heart racing. She felt Oliver clinging to her, his small fingers digging into her arm. She could almost see the figure more clearly now, its eyes glinted, shining like shards of glass in the blackness. "What do you want? We didn't do anything to you." She realized her voice cracked, betraying her inner terror. "It laughed, an eerie sound that reverberated through the hollow. You fled from the past, but it always finds you. The town remembers you, and it remembers what you lost." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Was it taunting her? Just as hope began to flicker, a second figure appeared beside the first, and then another. They were closing in, and panic clawed at her mind. "Mom!" Oliver whimpered, his voice barely a whisper. "Hold on," Sarah yelled, recognizing the tug of fear pulling at her heartstrings and the weight of her own buried memories trying to resurface. She had to fight back. With desperate resolve, she scanned the darkness. There had to be a way out. There had to be. A loud crash interrupted her thoughts as something massive struck the edge of the sinkhole. "Run! Now!" Sarah urged, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she grabbed Oliver's hand, pushing him toward a narrow opening on the far side. The shadows roared, furious and wild, the figures spilling toward them in a growing tempest. As they dashed forward through the dark tunnel, the whispers turned into screams, echoing in her ears. "You cannot escape the truth. You belong to Cedar Hollow." The ground shook violently again, stones crumbling at their feet, forcing them to sprint as the darkness loomed closer, ready to reclaim them. With one final leap, Sarah and Oliver shot out of the tunnel, tumbling onto a different path, gasping for breath. They had escaped, but the shadows and their horrific echo followed closely, gnashing their teeth in the distance. The path ahead forked into two directions, one shrouded in mist and the other flickering with eerie light. Sarah felt the weight in her heart. "Which way, Mom?" Oliver asked, quivering beside her, eyes darting nervously. The air buzzed around them, thick with uncertainty. "I don't know," she admitted, scanning both paths when a sudden chill gripped her. A voice echoed from the shadows behind them, sounding closer now. "You're never free, you belong to us." In that moment, Sarah knew the real horror was just beginning. Which path could lead them to safety, and could they even believe there was still a way out of Cedar Hollow? Without hesitating, Sarah grabbed Oliver's hand, feeling the tremor of his small fingers mimic the rapid beat of her own heart. The flickering light drew her in a beacon, a promise of safety against the encroaching darkness. But the whispering shadows were relentless, a dark tide that crashed against their resolve. "Let us go this way," she said, pulling Oliver toward the light. Every instinct screamed for them to flee, but the mist seemed to thicken, almost alive, curling around them with malicious intent. "Mom, I don't like this." Oliver's voice trembled, as a chilling wind swept through the trees, writhing like the tendrils of something hungry. She looked ahead, where the light pulsated but remained tantalizingly vague. "Stay close," she ordered, desperation clawing at her throat. As they moved deeper into the path, the whispers transformed from frantic cries into a sing-song melody that felt familiar, too familiar. Join us," it echoed in a hypnotic cadence. The words unintelligible yet so compelling. Sarah shook her head, as though to dispel the frightening allure. Thoughts of bygone days surfaced, laughter, sunlight on her skin, innocence long lost. She steeled herself and pressed on, Oliver trailing closely behind, fear radiating off him like a palpable energy. And then they entered a clearing, bathed in an unsettling light. The trees encircled them like watchful sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching toward the sky, forming a distorted archway. In the center, a makeshift altar was adorned with thick, black candles flickering erratically, their flames like tiny tongues of fire licking the damp air. "What is this place?" Oliver whispered, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Sarah replied softly, taking a cautious step forward. A sense of dread engulfed her. This clearing felt wrong, alive with the essence of forgotten memories and unholy intentions. Suddenly, the shadows at the edge of the tree line shifted, transforming into dark figures that were both horrifying and oddly serene, their features indistinct yet hauntingly reminiscent of people Sarah once knew. She shivered, recognizing the way they moved, floating, gliding, whispering their invitation. "Come to us," they beckoned, and Sarah's heart lurched. Each word seemed to pierce her mind, a haunting reminder of the life she left behind, the family she lost. "No," she cried out, trying to push the memories back, to drown out the shadows that threatened to take her. Oliver squeezed her arm tighter, his breath sharp and panicked. "Mom, they're coming." His voice pierced through the fog of her mind, and with a frenzied urgency, she jerked him closer, scanning the area for an escape. But the ground shimmered, as if it were breaking apart around them. "Stay behind me," she shouted, starting to retreat. But just as she turned, the light flickered violently, and in that second, everything changed. The shadows converged swiftly, an insatiable force that swept towards them like a dark wave. A shriek pierced the air, not from the figures but from the very ground beneath, splitting apart in a jagged crack that yawned open like a hungry mouth. "Mom, what's happening?" Panic seized Oliver's voice. "Hold on." She snatched Oliver's hand, and together they surged away from the encroaching darkness, darting toward the edge of the clearing, where the trees wrapped around them in an eternal embrace. They ran blindly, the whispers clawing at their heels. You cannot escape. But in that moment, something flickered in Sarah's mind, an echo of old voices, memories pleading for release. Could she fight them, face the guilt and grief she had buried? The shadows shifted and transformed, and she heard a familiar laugh, sweet yet sinister, as they raced into the underbrush. It became clear the forest itself was a living entity, watching, ensuring they faced the truth now deemed unavoidable. And in the distance, a figure emerged from the shadows, its face obscured. Yet a cruel smile revealed something unthinkable. "Sarah," it called out again, sending icy tendrils of dread creeping up her spine. With thundering hearts, mother and son dashed toward the unknown, uncertainty devouring their hope as they plunged deeper into Cedar Hollow, where the past was a predator that never forgot. A sudden rustle in the thicket stopped them cold. Was it just the forest shifting? Or was it something far more sinister stalking them through the dense foliage? Time itself seemed to hold its breath, ready to unleash truths long hidden. A low growl resonated from within the thicket, rolling like thunder in the night. Sarah froze, her breath hitching in her throat. The sound was unlike anything she had ever heard, a primal noise that turned her blood cold. Oliver clutched her leg, his small frame trembling. "Mom, I want to go home," he whimpered, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. She wanted to comfort him, to tell him it would be okay. But a chill swept through her, a reminder that this was not an ordinary night. The shadows surrounding them twisted and writhed, shadows that sought to unearth their worst fears. "Just stay quiet," she whispered, leading Oliver further into the darkness, away from the unknown source of the growl. The ground beneath her feet pulsed, each step sending a ripple through the damp earth. She glanced back toward the clearing, where the altar still loomed ominously, and the flickering candles shivered against the wind. Suddenly, the melody returned, its sinister chorus intertwining with the growl. Join us, join us." Each repetition was like a hypnotic drumbeat, pulling Sarah deeper into the forest, ensnaring her thoughts in a foggy web. "Mom," Oliver's voice was small, breaking the spell momentarily. "What do they want?" The question seared into her mind. What did they want? Her instinct told her to protect her son, to shield him from whatever dark fate awaited. Yet something else, a darker, hidden longing called to her. "Stay close," she commanded, though the command felt hollow. As they moved deeper, the trees closed in, branches clawing at Sarah's hair and clothes, scratching her skin where they grazed. She could sense them watching, judging each dark figure lurking, feeding off her panic. Then, abruptly, the whispers changed. The innocent calls of "join us" morphed into a chilling laughter, high-pitched and mocking. "You can't run from the truth," taunted. "You've already lost." Sarah, that name sent a shockwave through her. No one called her that any longer, not since the tragedy, not since the loss. But here, in this wretched place, echoes persisted, voices from the past resurfacing through the mist like phantoms. She squeezed Oliver's hand, heart pounding, battling the urge to answer the call. "Mom, I can't breathe," he gasped, his face turning pale. The grip of reality was slipping. Everything felt unreal, as if they were tangled in a nightmarish loop. Then a crackling branch broke their desperate silence, and the figure stepped into view. It was tall, impossibly thin, skin stretched tight over its bones, eyes like hollows of darkness that seemed to draw in every flicker of light. And then it spoke, voice echoing in the stillness. "You shouldn't have come back, Oliver. Run." Sarah screamed, yanking him back. They stumbled but kept moving, hearts pounding as they fled, weaving blindly through the underbrush, branches whipping at their skin. The woods throbbed with an ominous energy, shadows darting this way and that, waiting to pounce. The growl followed them, growing louder until it split into a cacophony of voices, whispering their fears, regrets, and secrets back at her. The path twisted, and they lost all sense of direction. Desperation surged, a primal instinct to survive as dread coiled around them. Through the trees, Sarah shouted, leading Oliver toward an opening, praying for a way out. They burst through the undergrowth, landing on the other side, and froze. Before them lay a deep ravine, the ground beneath lined with a slick, dark substance that shimmered under the weak moonlight. Something moved below, a mass of shifting shadows, writhing in the depths. "No!" Sarah shouted, horror seizing her heart. They had nowhere left to go. The figure loomed closer, its features now painfully clear, a ghastly mimicry of the life Sarah once knew. "You left us, but you're still one of us. What do you want from us?" Sarah screamed, terror flooding her veins. "Join us," it rasped, reaching an arm toward them, darkness pooling at its fingertips. Oliver wailed, "Mom!" She pulled him tight as the shadows encroached, wrapping around their legs, pulling them toward the precipice. The forest held its breath, anticipation thick in the air. The truth lingered in the darkness, waiting to unveil itself, a truth that was wrapping around them like a noose. As they teetered at the edge, the forest seemed to exhale. Would they be swallowed by the truth? Or could there still be a way to break free before it was too late? The shadows clawed at Sarah's ankles, pulling her down with a persistent tug. She could feel the darkness slithering over her skin, ice-cold and urgent, and Oliver's frightened screams amplified the panic that roiled in her stomach. "Hold on tight," she yelled, fighting against the grip of the encroaching void. With every ounce of strength left in her, Sarah yanked backward, whooshing Oliver behind her as though he were a life raft in a turbulent sea. They stumbled away from the ravine, away from whatever darkness threatened to swallow them whole. The figure laughed, a sound that pierced her ears and burrowed deep into her mind. "You can't escape the call." Ignoring the wild heartbeat of fear, Sarah focused on finding a path, any path. The forest around them twisted, limbs reaching out like skeletal fingers bent on keeping them trapped. She felt the weight of the shadows, the disdain of the trees, as if they were alive, scornful of their very existence. "Mom, I can't keep running," Oliver gasped, his small body shuddering with exhaustion. He was slipping, and the last thing she could allow was for him to be lost here, to be claimed by whatever cursed spirit haunted these woods. "Just a little further," she urged, straining for strength. Alpha urges, primal instincts told her to flee. Yet she couldn't ignore the tugging at her heart, the familiar voice that whispered femininely in the periphery of her mind. Be with us, Mom, please," Oliver whimpered, his grip on her hand faltering. She glanced at him, seeing the fear and fatigue etched across his tiny features. It was too much. She couldn't allow him to stumble now. In that moment, she made a choice, a gut-wrenching decision that entwined hope and despair. "Let us hide," she shouted, forcing them into a dense cluster of trees, their trunks standing like sentinels, ancient and brooding. They squeezed between two thick boles, the brambles clawing at their clothes, but it felt like the only chance they had. Silence enveloped them as they pressed against the rough bark. Her heart hammered in her chest, the breath caught in her throat, while the darkness beyond throbbed like a living entity. 10 seconds trickled by, turning into a minute that felt like an eternity, and she held her breath, praying. Then distorted whispers flitted through the air, like sickly ribbons wrapping around them. "You cannot hide, we see you," the figurous voice echoed again, more guttural now, layered with an insidious tone, as if it had multiplied, fed by the forest's malice. Shadows twisted, flickering at the edges of their hiding spot. Everything inside Sarah screamed chaos and fear, but there was no denying the piercing truth that echoed within. They weren't alone. She turned to Oliver, eyes wide, the boy's pale face a reflection of her own terror. "Mom, it's too dark," he breathed, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Before she could respond, a sudden rush of wind whipped through the trees, a whispering gale that seemed to carry voices, calling her name. "Sarah, Sarah, no, not again," she gasped, squeezing her eyes shut, trying to block out the familiar sound. Panic clawed at her throat. It was impossible that they had returned. They had buried those memories, buried the past. "Mom!" Oliver cried out, voice ripped from his chest as he tried to cover his ears. The shadows began crawling toward them, and the very essence of the forest felt alive, quivering in anticipation. "Run!" Sarah screamed, bursting through the foliage, yanking Oliver along, adrenaline flooding her veins. She charged deeper into the woods, branches snagging against her skin as she pressed on. The growl rising behind them again, a relentless predator stalking its prey. But where were they running to? There was no escape from what had been so vilely rooted in her past. The forest mocked them, twisting pathways, beckoning branches, and suffocating paranoia. The oppressive weight of the truth bore down heavily, fingers curling around her spirit as they burst into another clearing. A flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure more defined, now larger than before, brimming with dark energy. You can't escape your fate, Sarah. The truth always finds you. Fear ignited within her. The unmistakable sting of dread filled the air, and that twisted sense of déjà vu clawed at her heart. What unexpected path lay ahead of them? Would the truth consume her body and soul? In that moment, she realized the darkness wasn't merely pursuing. It was waiting, as a spellbound predator bides its time for the perfect moment to strike. And then the world erupted in chaos as the figure lunged forward, shifting the very ground beneath her. Would they survive this relentless hunt, or was this their long-forgotten homecoming? Sarah could feel the impending dread caving in, with each breath warning her. Some truths were meant to stay buried, but buried truths clawed their way up. The ground trembled beneath Sarah's feet, the figure lunging through the air like a shadow given form. She instinctively shielded Oliver with her body, heart racing. The stench of decay filled her nostrils, clinging to her as the surrounding trees warped in the dim light. "Mom! It's right there!" Oliver shrieked, pure terror breaking his voice. They took off again, but the figure was faster, its presence blurring the line between nightmare and reality. Twisted faces pressed through the bark of trees, specters reaching out as if desperate to pull them back into the darkness. "You cannot escape what you have forgotten," the voice snarled, taunting. Branches scraped against Sarah's skin, hot rivulets of pain tracing her arms, but she couldn't afford to care. The forest was alive with whispers, the wind howling secrets that seeped into her mind. "Help us! Join us!" The seductive chant flooded her senses, each word wrapping around her heart like a vice. "Stay focused, Sarah. We need to go." She fought to keep Oliver ahead of her, pushing him onward. But the ground felt like a viscous trap, each step heavier than the last, as if the earth itself conspired to pull them into its depths. Beyond the clearing, an ominous fog rolled in, thick and enveloping. Sarah could hardly see, but she could feel the chilling touch of their pursuer so close behind. It tugged at her, each longing for her to turn and embrace it, to give in to the darkness that beckoned. "Mom, look!" Oliver gasped, pointing at the edge of the clearing where faint shapes began to flicker in and out of view like dying fireflies. Faces, once familiar to her, twisted with anguish, their mouths moving in silent screams. "No," she whispered, the realization slamming into her gut. Memories rushed back, horrible scenes she had tried so desperately to bury. "They can't find us, they can't be here." But deep down, she knew they were never truly gone. "Mom!" Oliver tugged at her arm, his eyes reflecting pure panic. "We can't stay here." With every ounce of will, she sprinted toward the last semblance of safety. Twisted vines sprung from the ground, scratching at her legs, but she pushed through. "Just a little further," she howled, digging deep within herself for something, anything to keep them moving. Suddenly, a freezing gust swept across her face, and the laughter of the figure echoed like thunder around them. "You can't escape the truth. Not when it resides within you." The trees seemed to close in, roots breaking free and curling around her ankles. Sarah kicked and pulled, fighting for her freedom both from the physical grip and the weight of memories rising to the surface. "Mom, it's too strong," Oliver cried, fear bubbling in his voice. "No, listen to me," she shouted, desperation flooding every word. "You need to believe. We can do this." In that moment, time stretched and twisted. The darkness felt like it was revolving around her, thick like a storm. But just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, a flicker of silver light pierced the shroud. A faint glow sparkled in the distance. "Oliver, to the light," she urged, dragging him along as she dashed toward it. The shadows screamed and writhed violently, as if the very forest itself rebelled against their escape. The warmth grew stronger, and for a moment, Sarah felt hope bloom within her chest, the kind of hope that defied all odds. But as they neared the glow, a piercing scream shattered the air. It resonated through her bones, a warning that sent chills racing along her spine. The light dimmed, flickering as the laughter morphed into anguished cries. You cannot hide from what has already come. They burst into a new clearing, and the light revealed a twisted altar pulsating with a dark power, its surface coated in a thick layer of ash. Above it, silhouettes writhed like trapped souls. Sarah's heart sank as a figure materialized at the center, drenched in shadows and glowing malevolence. Everything grew still. The forest fell silent, holding its breath. Sarah saw the figure's eyes blaze with a fiery confidence, and her stomach twisted. "Welcome home, Sarah," it whispered, a smirk curving on its lips. "It's time to reclaim what's yours." In that haunting moment, she felt the walls of the world closing in, choking off her thoughts. They stood on the precipice of something dark and dreadful, an abyss calling her name. But could she truly confront the demons of her past? Or was she forever destined to be ensnared in this cycle of horror? The ground trembled again, and the shadows danced with anticipation. The truth loomed heavy, casting a relentless darkness that would not be ignored. Would they break free, or would the shifting shadows consume them both? The light flickering above the altar strained like a breath on the edge of existence. Those shadows, dark and omniscient, surrounded Sarah and Oliver, a suffocating shroud threatening to collapse in on them. The figure before them, a twisted reflection of what she had once lost, grinned, and for a moment, time froze, suffused with unholy tension. Sarah could feel the weight of despair embedding into her bones, and Oliver clung to her side, his small frame trembling against the uncertainty of not just their fate, but of who they were in this cursed wooden labyrinth. A heavy silence filled the air, interspersed only by the faint echoes of lost souls, their whispers clawing at the recesses of her mind. "Sarah," the figure crooned, its voice reminiscent of a lost lullaby. "Join us, be free forever." "No," she shouted, rage piercing through her fear, igniting a fiery defiance in her chest. "This isn't freedom, this is a trap." She tightened her grip on Oliver, suddenly aware of the flickering light behind her that had begun to pulse with energy, as if reacting to her steadfastness. The otherworldly figure laughed, an unsettling sound that reverberated through the clearing. "You cannot defy your nature, my dear. You are bound to Cedar Hollow, and it knows your every fear, every regret. We are your very essence." Sarah's heart raced. "No, I abandoned this place. I chose to leave." But deep down, shadows of memories surged like a tidal wave, galling reminders of her past familiar faces, lost loves, the tragic remnants of what should have been. Moments that left her feeling hollow and guilt-ridden resurfaced, begging her attention. They echoed within her, threatening to compromise her resolve. "Oliver," she shouted, locking eyes with her son. "You have to be brave. We're getting out of this hell together." "Mom, listen to me," she interrupted fiercely. "No matter what happens, you must hold on to who you are. Love conquers the darkness. Our love is stronger than any shadows they throw at us." As the figure scoffed and the shadows coiled closer, Sarah took a deep, steadying breath. She had to harness the memories, transform them from chains into strength. "I won't let them take you. We are not theirs for the taking." Exerting an immense force of will, Sarah began to focus on that shimmering light behind her, merging it with the love she felt for Oliver. The glowing energy around the altar fluctuated as if sensing her determination, pulsating with the echo of hope. But the figure sneered, springing forward with the ferocity of a storm, darkness pooling around it like hungry tendrils reaching for prey. "The pact is unbreakable. You cannot escape what you've accepted. Is that so?" she growled, clenching her fists like lifelines. Just as the shadows dove toward them, Sarah plunged her essence into the light, the essence of every treasured memory she shared with Oliver, the laughter, the quiet moments sitting together, the love that filled the cracks of sorrow. The altar erupted in a blinding light, radiating truth and defiance. The shadows writhed, contorting in agony as if intolerant of the illumination that illuminated the darkness once and for all. "Flee!" she cried, tugging Oliver behind her as they raced toward the growing brilliance. They burst through the threshold, where shadows couldn't reach, where the heartbeat of the forest fell silent, the whispers dissolving into non-existence. Heart-pounding, Sarah grasped Oliver's hand tightly, their feet skimming over the forest floor, venturing into the light that beckoned them like an old friend in moments. They dashed past the twisted trees, no longer watching with disdain, now mere silhouettes fading into the background. Fresh air filled their lungs as dawn broke, the colors bleeding into the horizon, an awakening witness to their escape. "Mom, is it over?" Oliver's voice trembled, infused with hope that felt foreign. "Yes," Sarah gasped, pulling him close, feeling light for the first time. "We did it. We're free." As the sun rose, painting the world with golden hues, the memories of Cedar Hollow began to wane, no longer haunting but learning. The horrors of the past were still there but diminished, like a distant storm fading into mere rumblings, with Oliver clinging to her side. They walked hand in hand, embracing the warmth of a new day, a promise glowing fiercely in the sun's embrace. They glanced back at the dark woods, now soaked in a radiant glow. It would not hold on to them any longer. Cedar Hollow stood still, a reminder of what they escaped, yet now silent. She allowed herself a whisper, goodbye, and slipped into the promise of tomorrow, each step lighter, healthier, reclaimed. And somewhere deep in the woods, the whispers faded as light enveloped all shadows once more. This was the moment they would reclaim their courageous heartbeats. Now this is the moment for you. If you're ready to hear more extraordinary stories, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on each exclusive tale. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and share the love for storytelling. Flood the comments with your thoughts and reactions. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. Thank you. Let us keep the adventure alive together.